The Gold Rush is a 1925 dramatic comedy directed by Charles Chaplin and starring Charlie Chaplin, Mack Swain, Tom Murray, Malcolm Waite, and Georgia Hale. The film is set during the Alaskan Gold Rush with a lot of people in line for that new iPhone. The tramp wanders in the wilderness as Big Jim strikes a fortune in gold. The tramp wanders into the cabin of Black Larson, a wanted man hiding in the wilderness. He tries to get the tramp to leave, but Mother Nature has other ideas. Big Jim flies in and they fight for shelter, ending in a scuffle for a shotgun. They stay for days without food, eating candles, and eventually drawing cards to volunteer someone to find food. Larson is a big winner and heads into the wilderness, getting into a shootout, robbing the dead men, and eating bacon. All the while, the others are eating shoes for Thanksgiving and eventually considering cannibalism. Shit, this looks a lot like Friday the 13th the game. Luckily, a bear shows up and becomes dinner. They eventually say goodbye with Jim discovering Larson stealing his claim and knocking him upside the head. Don't worry, Larson gets his. The tramp arrives in town as we're introduced to Jack, our resident asshole, and Georgia, our resident heroine. The tramp goes to a show, gets hit with Jack douchery, and becomes the earliest example of forever alone. He becomes enchanted with Georgia and steals trash, her photo. Jack pulls a Weinstein, gets cock-blocked by the tramp, and they dance. Of course, he gets tied to a dog and shows us at Hollywood before the ASPCA. Georgia tells Jack to fuck off, causing an altercation with the tramp, but don't worry, he ends up getting clocked. Ha 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 ha! Get it? Because he got hit with the fucking clock. The tramp ends up cabin sitting with Georgia and her friends showing up while gallivanting around. 4 women, 1 man in a cabin. Scandal. She finds a photo and a flower she had been carrying earlier, causing her to fear the creeper as he works to get a date. And one of the other girls flaunts her hot ass. They set up a New Year's Eve date, but it turns out that the bitch is playing him. After working his ass off, New Year's arrives with the tramp setting up a nice spread, but ends up falling asleep dreaming of one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history. The gang never shows up and Georgia ends up partying and shooting people at midnight. And the tramp is all alone. Wow, this Santa convention really knows how to party. They decide to be even shittier than the tramp as the Jack-Georgia faction profess their love for each other. Guilt overcomes her, leading to Jack trying to pull a Matt Lauer, but he ends up getting slapped for his trouble. Meanwhile, Jim arrives playing Memento to that he can't remember where his claim is located. Georgia writes an apology letter for that asshole Jack. The tramp walks in and Jack starts giving him shit, handing the tramp the letter to be even more dickish. Jesus Christ, kick a guy while he's down. Jim finds the tramp and they head for the cabin after Georgia is informed that he won't be scum for much longer. They return to the cabin and stay overnight with a storm blowing the cabin all over the place. They eventually arrive on a cliff, leading to another iconic film moment. Jim realizes they're at the claim and they're rich. Heading out on a boat, meeting the media, and conveniently finding his love. The Gold Rush is a film classic, and believe me, I don't get to say that very often doing this show. In the plethora of films that came out during this era, Charlie Chaplin delivers one that not only has state-of-the-art special effects for the time, but also is able to take the audience on an emotional roller coaster ride. Seriously, you want to see Georgia get trampled by a bunch of horses. It really shows how sensibilities have changed in the last century. In 1925, it may have been perfectly acceptable for a protagonist to end up with the heroine that treated him like shit the entire movie. Today, I can hear the audience saying, "You need to tell that bitch to fuck off." This is a true classic that cemented Chaplin's reputation that would continue to grow over the next decade. A wonderful film that deserves its iconic status. Fuck stick.